I'm Jacob Pechenik, and I beat the often path by challenging the current food system, encouraging and enabling anyone and everyone, which means you, to reconnect with the joy and satisfaction that comes from growing your own food.
Welcome back to the Beat the Often Path podcast. I'm your host, Ross Palmer. On this show, we showcase unusual and outside-the-box success stories to give us a greater perspective on our lives and careers, and to hopefully add meaning to both of those things. Joining me today is Jacob Pechenik, the co-founder of Lettuce Grow, that's lettuce as in salad, a company that he created together with Zooey Deschanel. The idea is profound. They've created a device that lets people grow a significant quantity of produce like lettuce, etc., either inside their home or outside with a self-contained hydroponic system that's basically foolproof. For many people, it represents one of the easiest ways to dramatically improve the quality of their food while greatly reducing the carbon footprint required to get that produce and food to their home. As we love on this show, it's really a win-win, and I think you'll see why as we learn more. But just as interesting is Jacob's own highly unusual career path, which saw him go from trading to MIT to producing dozens of well-known Hollywood films to ultimately founding this company. It is a deeply inspiring story that I know you'll really enjoy. So here's Jacob Pechenik of Lettuce Grow. Well, welcome to the show, Jacob. Excellent intro. You nailed it on the first try, so good job. It's often confusing. You got it. So growing food, something that we're very passionate about. You've got the device behind you, super cool looking device, which I should note for those who are listening. Now, this is great. I did some research into this, and I saw an article from Inc.com about it, and I'm going to quote them just because it's so funny. They say it looks like a cross between a fancy bong designed by Johnny Ive and one of those new school security robots that patrols the mall. I don't know who's writing that.
I haven't seen that one. You got to send that.
Had you heard that one?
Yeah, but I love it.
I think I Googled it in the discovery process, and I thought, okay, that's pretty creative and pretty descriptive. Somebody at Inc.com was having fun, but you touch upon growing your own food, and you've created this very interesting device that makes it easier, which is super compelling to people like me, because I have a garden space for the first time ever. I lived in apartments for years and years, and now I find myself with a garden space, and growing food is tough. I'll admit, it's a challenge, especially when you got pests, you got rodents, you got all kinds of things that come in and eat the thing. Like I had a tomato plant, and it was looking great. Woke up the next morning, all the tomatoes were gone. Some critter had come in and eaten them all.
Raccoons.
Yeah, probably raccoons are roaming the grounds. So it's been very challenging for me to actually grow food. So let's talk first about what this project and product is, and then we'll go back into how you stumbled upon it or how you came up with the idea.
Sure. Yeah, so what you see behind me and what Inc. described as this futuristic device, we call it a farm stand. And that's a hydroponic growing system. It holds 20 gallons of water, and it could grow from 12 to 36 different plants at a time. And it does all the irrigation and everything for you. And it comes with an app. You really only need about 5 minutes a week of attention to it. But the real secret sauce are the seedlings. And I have one right here. It's a little baby plant. And we have a network of farms across the country. And we do the thing that's the hardest thing to do when you're growing your own food. And that's really like knowing what to grow, when to grow it, how to germinate the seeds. And we get the plants to be 2 to 3 weeks old in perfect condition. And then we send them to you to put them in that futuristic looking device to finish growing them. So you're pretty much guaranteed a harvest, and in half the time that it would normally take, to grow it.
Well, that's good. I mean, I know that you've been featured by a lot of publications, Oprah Magazine, so a lot of big name publications that people would know have featured the product, given rave reviews. So I'm going to give a very, very Oprah-style interview question here and say that I can't keep anything alive, so how will I keep something alive with this device? Because the reviews seem to indicate that it's pretty foolproof.
It's very, very foolproof. And you're not alone. I mean, every single person, so I didn't design this for gardeners. or for hobbyists or people who are already familiar with Home Depot or Lowe's and, growing their own stuff. This is designed for people who eat food and people who kill plastic plants. So the whole idea wasn't showing people how to grow. It was really delivering nutrition more efficiently than the current food system. So for us to be successful, our customers, our growers need to be successful. And so everything that we do is geared towards ensuring that you are going to have a harvest, in 3 weeks, and that it's going to be on your dinner table. So that's, from the plants to the unit to our customer care, it's foolproof. We let people grow with us for a whole season, and they can return the product if they'd like to after that. And since we started, we have fewer than 1% returns. So it's a sign of just how easy it is for everyone. We've got growers in all 50 states. We have 40% of the people grow indoors, 60% outdoors. And across our whole growing network, we have the ability to grow over 1.5 million plants per month. So it's really, it's spread out. It's across, backyards, patios, kitchens, living rooms. And yeah, it's for everyone.
Well, that sounds fantastic, obviously. Very cool. And I do like the design of it. What then is the problem? You mentioned efficiency. You mentioned, obviously, people killing plants. But what is the problem as you see it, and how does this solve that problem?
Yeah. Well, the last 50 years, there's been a lot of technology advancements in farming. It starts with like farming equipment and machinery, and then it went to chemicals used like fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides, and a lot of them with, a lot of negative ramifications to the environment. Then genetic engineering. And so all of these different things has increased the productivity of farming to a dramatic, a level. But at the same time, the farms have been pushed further and further away from population centers. And so the average piece of produce now travels 1,500 to 2,000 miles to get to the grocery store and to your plate. And it's 7 to 10 days old by the time you buy it. And half of the nutritional content is gone. And half is wasted along the way. It's kind of ridiculous. We're putting our lettuce on a supply chain that was designed for Doritos, for shelf-stabilized things that store well and travel well. But fresh food should be fresh. So when you look at it, you have, there's just so much loss, along the way. So my thought was, even though this is ubiquitous, right? People think, you go to the grocery store to get fresh food. I actually think it's nuts. So, I think we need to relocalize food systems, that the food should be grown much closer to where it's consumed. And ideally, a portion of it, and I think up to 20%, could be grown actually in the home.
20%. That's the number you have?
That's my target. I think, in the end of the day, we're still consumers, and we're still going to go out to eat and, get food elsewhere. But I think it's very achievable to do 20%. And currently, our growers are growing, depending on the size unit they have, they're growing between $500 and $1,500 worth of produce a year. So when you look at the overall grocery bill, it's approaching that level.
So you touch upon a number of things. And what I think is so compelling about the solution you've come up with is that a lot of people in the world don't have space. They don't have gardens, they don't have yards, but they do have the space, certainly indoors, for something like what's directly behind your right shoulder. So it is a very fascinating concept. And the idea of getting 20% of your veggies from your own home is also incredible, just saving on the gas and the shipping and all the logistics there. So how did you end up on this idea? How did you decide that this was something that you wanted to go in on?
Yeah, well, my career is, taken a bunch of twists and turns.
That's what we're here
But
for.
yeah, um, yeah, because I started trading like stocks and options when I was 14, and
Wow.
when I left
Okay.
school, I started my own trading fund, and then
No way.
Then I went and built software and uh, built trading systems, and went into the film business. And financed and produced like 35 films. And on the 35th film, I met
35. Jeez.
yeah, too many.
Whew.
But I met the future mother of my kids, and she got pregnant, and I started looking at the food that we were eating. I just wanted to have a perfectly healthy baby, and I just started to see chemicals on packaging that I didn't recognize. And I went to MIT. I have a degree in chemical engineering, and I used to think it was like cool to see the chemical names, but not in the food, and especially not if I didn't know what they were. And so we opted just to eat organic food, and food is close to as nature intended, just regular food. And I was just really taken aback by the price point. It's like, God, why is just natural, like why is a head of spinach cost more than a Big Mac? It's nuts. So
question.
that led me to really want to learn about farming, and I ended up starting an aquaponics farm in Austin, Texas, and that was with two other farmers, two other entrepreneurs that had built this really cool farm in their backyard, and they needed some help building it out to be a bigger enterprise. So I joined, I invested, and then I ended up running the company and learned all about farming. And the idea with that was the company is called Efficient Organics, and it was to grow produce as efficiently as possible, 100% organic, with no waste, and as low cost as possible. And it was definitely challenging, but the most challenging part of the whole thing was getting the product from the farm to the store. And we had to take this beautiful head of lettuce. I mean, it was like art. And we had to put that in that single-use plastic clamshell or the plastic bag, which then went into a corrugated box, which then went into a refrigerated truck, which then, went to a distribution center, which then sat in bins, and then went on another truck to go to the grocery store. And that's where, you have this, which then, ultimately gets to your fridge, right? That bag that you open that then goes bad, right? So that leads to this 40 to 50% waste. So I'm like, this is kind of nuts. If we just took the waste out, we'd cut the price of fresh food in half just by taking the waste out, and there's all this science and people thinking about, oh, let's use this like herbicide, or let's use this new chemical, this new genetic engineering. We'll get like a 1% improvement in yield. And we have all this negative ramification. But if we actually just took the waste out, we would have 100% improvement in yield. So I thought, wow, this farming, the small farm that we had, and all the other farms in the community and other communities would never really work unless we solved this like last mile problem and we solved the waste problem. So I started to think of different paradigms. Like, do we need to kill the plant and then send essentially a dead plant thousands of miles to the store over this time? Or could we somehow send a living plant to the end customer, bypass the distribution center and the stores and the refrigerated trucks and all that, and just have it sit there and grow and be alive and tasty until the end consumer is ready to eat? And it sounded like a crazy idea, but I just started thinking through it and saw that, the way we architected, not only do we reduce all that waste, but we could also reduce 98% of the water. So not a lot of people know, but conventionally it takes 20 to 21 gallons of water to just grow a head of lettuce. With our system, it takes 0.8 gallons because it's hydroponics and everything's recirculating. But in the current food system, you essentially, there's 2 lettuces being grown and transported for everyone that's consumed. So it's essentially 40 gallons of water used, versus 0.8 gallons. So when we think about like the water situation that we're in, especially in California, saving 40 gallons of water is a big deal, on one piece of produce. So we can reduce the water, and then we also reduce the chemicals. There's 0 chemicals used. We can reduce the labor. We can reduce, the overall real land footprint. So, the more I thought through it was, hey, this is kind of like solar panels, but for food. And the portion of food that we can do this way, we should.
So the actual unit, the farm stand itself, does that plug into an outlet? Does it require some amount of power to operate? What do I need to run it?
Yeah. So if you're growing outdoors, you need an outlet. You need about 6 to 8 hours of sunlight, and you just plug our pump into the outlet, and the pump is on a timer, and every hour or so it goes off, and it runs for about 15 minutes, and it shoots water to the top of the system, and it rains down inside, and it delivers the right amount of water and nutrients to the roots. And it draws the same amount of power as like a 60-watt light bulb. It's about 50 cents a month. If you're growing indoors, then you need one more socket, and that would be to plug in the lights.
Sure.
And the lights they were designed to so that the plants grow really well, but also aesthetically that they're easy to have around you. That there's a very warm temperature. They're not
go
like
blind.
Blue. Yeah, you're not going to go blind, and there's no added blue light, which isn't really good for for people. And that adds another $1.50 to $2 worth of power per month.
And one of the things that I saw from your website was this idea that also for kids, the idea of watching something grow, like you said, for your kids and being a part of that process makes the idea of eating this thing seem more palpable, and it makes it more valuable. Whereas if I say, hey, here's some lettuce, who knows where it came from? You say, ugh, I don't want that. But if you say, hey, let's watch this thing grow, and then it becomes a pet project and kind of exciting, then when it comes time to eat it, there's this inherent appreciation for where it comes from based on watching that process, which I think is super cool.
Definitely. I mean, I don't even need to tell them, hey, let's eat this thing that we grow, because they just go over there, pick it off, and they just start eating. And it's remarkable that they'll pull a head of romaine or, just something else that you'd think that would normally they'd want salad dressing or different things to make it taste better. They won't eat a tomato at a restaurant, but they pull the cherry tomatoes right off the farm stand, and they just, they eat them like they're candy. So it's in seeing kids and watching my kids, and also, we have a program where we donate one to a school for every 10 that we sell. So we're in thousands of classrooms. And so I've seen lots of kids interact, and I would say every single kid, right, has some affinity to growing. It doesn't have to be through our system. It could be through raised beds or just like, growing a potato in a jar. But that's why, earlier I said it's in our DNA. I believe it because I observe it. It's, and we have grown our own food for hundreds of thousands of years. It's only the last 200 that we haven't. We've actually been pulled away from it. So it's kind of like a reconnect, but the kids have that innate instinct. So my goal is to give them that experience, right? Put it in front of them. And that does lead them to be more adventurous in their own eating, more open-minded, more thoughtful about things. And I think then they grow up to have a more connected mindset than like our generation, did growing up.
Yeah, and a lot of these solutions that I've come across, they paint a picture of a future where the individual home unit is much more productive. And I've come across a number of fascinating companies at this point, like this Italian startup that lets you keep bees in your backyard, and those bees produce a shocking amount of honey, 2.5 kilos per month, an insane amount of honey. So you can get honey for yourself. You can get lettuce now for yourself with your project. You can power this thing with, like you said, solar panels on your roof. You can get your own water from the air. So there's this vision of the future where the home unit is much more productive and much more self-contained and much less reliant on these external systems, which, as we know, are being pushed sort of to their breaking point at this point in time and are probably going to break in the next 20 years. There's no guarantee that these complicated supply chains are just going to keep functioning as they have been the last 50, 60 years.
Yeah, they're breaking right now. I could talk about lettuce. That's my, I guess, expertise right now. But in Australia, the price of iceberg lettuce, do you have any idea what that is right now?
No, but I'm going to say $20 a bag. I don't know.
It's like $20 to $30 a head.
$20 to $30 a head for iceberg lettuce in Australia? Yeah. That cannot be right. Really?
That's what, you can go look it up. And
you have to really want iceberg lettuce at that point.
Yeah, KFC took it off took it out of all their sandwiches, replaced it with cabbage.
Get out of here.
But we are going to see price shocks like that here. We have this more and more. We have a globalized, supply chain. So things that happen in Ukraine, affect us, and then even within this country, like. The food is being transported all over the place. And, you hear things like, oh, there's another E. coli outbreak. Don't eat lettuce from Arizona, New Mexico, California, Colorado, because we don't know where it comes from.
Or like the spinach scare of some years back.
Yeah, it's so over industrialized and centralized that we need to go more back to a distributed system. And I think that, the older school companies were focused on owning all of that, right, and centralizing that. And now there's, I think, a new breed of companies that have a more mind to distributing that and enabling, and empowering the consumer to make more decisions and to be, bigger part of that. And in the process, save, so much of the environmental resources and other costs involved. But, we're still dealing with consumers in the end, and consumers, are used to a certain convenience. So I think it's upon all of us, right, and to make our products, right, as easy to use as possible, as beautiful, right, as they can be, as cost competitive with the alternative. And yeah, we have a lot of work to do, but it is very possible, to reimagine how our consumption works, and where we consume our products from.
So tell me a little bit about your career arc. I mean, obviously we've got MIT in there, we've got chemical background, we've got brokerage, we've got all kinds of crazy, seemingly unrelated things. So how do you describe the pieces of your journey that led up to this, and how did you feel during those various parts of your life's journey?
Yeah. Let's see. I mean, I think a lot comes from like a beginner's mindset. I started young, so I didn't know anything. And I also took risk. And so starting, the beginner's mindset allows you to see things in fresh perspectives, right? You're an outsider. You're not really locked into, the current way of thinking. And I, from day one, I saw an opportunity and I questioned. I'm like, why is it done this way? Can it be done this other way? And maybe, my ideas were naive, but I think early on, I had enough energy, to go after the ideas, and I had a relative amount of success, and that really gave me confidence. So that when I went to the next thing and went to the next industry, which I knew nothing about when I got in, that I could return to that beginner's mindset. I could see what I saw and see inefficiencies and see things that didn't make sense, and have the confidence to know there is a path. Just keep on going, and that I'll find a path. And the last couple things that I've done, so I mentioned building a trading platform. So that was probably prior to Let Us Grow, the company I'm most proud of. And we built a weather derivatives trading platform. And so we're like, whoa, what's that? That's crazy. But it was essentially allowing, companies to trade their weather related like risk exposure with each other. And we, when I started it, and I would go to the different companies, like energy companies and hedge funds, and that were trading similar products, and I showed them what I had in mind. They were like, "That's crazy," But they're like, "Well, but if it worked 1% of the time, it'd be pretty interesting." So we started that way, but by the time I sold the company, and then switched industries, that we had like 98% market share, and we had done over $1 trillion of weather trading on the platform.
What?
So,
oh my goodness!
But it started with people saying, like, I don't want to say expletives, but you're, bleeping nuts. Like, what are you,
you can say whatever you want to say. You can say.
Yeah, but but it was also, having some innocence and having, the confidence to really believe in the vision that I had, and just keep chugging along. So in food, and I never really imagined a career in food, and I definitely never imagined a career in consumer products, right? In selling products,
sure.
to people. But I saw problems, and I said, this is a glaring problem that, like, somebody needs to do something.
Absolutely.
And the solution to it, involved the consumer. And so I ended up running a consumer product, company. But it was never a goal of mine. I never set out to do this. It was just, I was following my curiosity with, questioning why is organic food so expensive, learning about farming, and it's just kind of following the breadcrumbs and just seeing problems and thinking of solutions, and really not hearing any reasons why my ideas wouldn't work. So, that's why I went for them. And that's probably like the thread that's, in all my endeavors.
You've never been afraid to take a risk, or what other people deemed to be a risk, let's say. Do you, have you heard the old chestnut of, do you know the fastest way to become a millionaire in the movie business?
Is this start with 100 million?
Yeah, exactly. Do you find that
it's
to be
probably
true?
Start with 2 million, but yeah, I do.
35 films later, I think you know what you're talking about. So in terms of time, like you began when you were 14, built a brokerage business. what made you decided to go to MIT? I assume this was after that period. At what age did you go to MIT? The normal college age?
The
or was that
normal
later?
age.
Okay.
Yeah, I went the normal age.
And why did you choose the degree that you chose?
Well, to tell you the truth, I didn't know. I feel like maybe for me and maybe for a lot of kids that you go to college too early because it's like I had to pick a degree. So
I sure did. Yeah.
I picked, I asked what the hardest major was. And it was chemical engineering and aero astro. And but chemical engineering, you didn't have to do a thesis at the end. So I was like, I'll do chemical engineering. But it was really more of like probably this more like accomplishment-based, success-based mindset that maybe I grew up with or I got from my dad. So it was like I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I just know I wanted to do, something, I wanted to accomplish and probably make my dad happy, or make other, just stand out. So that was, the driver then. And I'm very happy I did pick that degree. I never worked in a refinery or anything like that. But, chemical engineers just solve very complex problems. And I think that's, and problems that involve many, many variables, too many variables to solve. So you really need to think, hey, which ones of these matter, which don't matter. And I think that's really the way I look at everyday problems. I see a lot of noise. There's a lot of clutter, in everything. And it's just like, okay, how do I boil down, like, what's really happening? What's the essence? And so I'm very grateful, I picked that degree.
Mm-hmm. Do you view your career arc as a progression in terms of skills and ethics and feeling, or do you see it as a series of semi-unrelated detours?
I think it's a progression, and I think it's also it might sound crazy, but like a return to who I am, at a core. Mm-hmm. And I see it like in my kids, because I have a 5 and a 7-year-old, and they're like so pure, they're so themselves. They're their own identities, which I had nothing to do with. And when I look at them, I can go look at the picture when they were just born, and I can see like what I see now. I could see that, in them. And I sometimes like say, like, I wonder, like, where's the little boy in me? Like, who is that identity? And that, that you get to a certain age and you have teachers say stuff and your parents say stuff, right? Like you get focused on success in chemical engineering or, all these different things, and you go down this path. But I think all of these decisions have brought me back to more like who I am, at the core. And that's like, I'm a very caring person. I, want to help, people, and I want to help the environment. And, when I started, I was like trading, I was using my skills to make money. And now money is the thing I probably care least about. I care about everything else, more. Yeah. So I think it's just really gotten me back to my core self.
Now that you're a few years into this project and, gaining momentum, has your vision expanded in terms of what you'd like to do in the next 5 to 10 years? Do you have some new ideas or things cooking of how you can better spread this or build the business? Or do you say, I'm just going to stick with this product and this idea for now until it reaches more people? Or what do you hope for the next several years?
Yeah. Well, there's kind of like, I think, a normal progression. I think in a way, when I first started, my vision was way more expansive. And I was like, okay, how am I going to do this? So one component was really getting consumer engagement. And so it was like, hey, let's get, people to grow their own food. Because we talked about like the CSA and that, because it's not just growing your own food, right? It's then how do we support all the local farmers, right? And in our community, and how do we make it easier for their food to get to our doors and to our homes. So in order to be efficient and effective, you have to kind of reduce your vision to focus, on one thing at a time, and then slowly re-expand it, and get back to where it was. So, but for Let Us Grow, for what we're doing right now, I mean, I have a huge vision for that. I think that, we used to not have refrigerators, and now we do. And we used to not have home gardens, and I mean, we used to, and then for a long time we didn't, and now we're going to go back to it. And I think a farm stand or something like it will be in every household. I don't know if it's in the next 10 years or 15 years, but I think somewhere in that time frame. So I'm working to make it as accessible so that everyone can participate in that.
Well, I want to be very respectful of your time. I very much appreciate you sitting down with me and sharing your vision and your thoughts. It's super compelling. I'm very glad that you have chosen to do this. As I said, I have a lot of respect for it. I wish you hundreds of thousands of more new farmers. I hope that your kids are inspired from this, and that the mission to make a tiny dent in the universe is a successful one in the next 10 years. Before we wrap it up, though, I'd like to leave the last word to you. So anything you want to promote or let people know about, or any action, or if you just have a parting piece of wisdom, you can shut us down.
Parting piece of wisdom: start before you're ready, and you can grow your own food at home successfully. So give it a shot. You'll love it.
Well, that sounds great. Jacob, with that, the official podcast is over.